Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. You know, every once in a while, we love to bring people in here who are just interesting. And this is one of those days. We've got Peter Trumpauer, who is a local gardener, and you can pretty much eat everything in his yard. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Now, we've got folks listening who are farmers, and they say, well, of course you can eat everything in your garden, but you take a different approach to gardening altogether, don't you, Peter?
Well, yes, I do. So
I'll
give a little bit of background.
Tell me a little bit about
Tell
me a little bit about you and what interested you in all of this.
Okay, so I grew up in a large family. We always had a garden. We needed the garden to eat.
Large? How large?
I have 7 brothers and 7 sisters.
My goodness.
So really large. And so we always had a garden at our house and a garden out at my oldest sister's house. We had fruit trees. My mom would always can and freeze fruits and vegetables. So I just grew up around that. And coincidentally, a little later in life, when I got married, my in-laws are farmers. And my father-in-law is a retired VOAG teacher. And I've got other family members that garden, things like that, that I've just always been around. Through high school and college, I worked in landscaping. And so I spent many years outside working really all different types of gardens.
Is there such a thing as a green thumb? Are some of us just better at making things grow than others of us?
Oh, I do believe that.
Uh-huh.
So I know without a doubt I do not have a green thumb inside the house. I'm
okay.
terrible inside the house.
Really?
So
What's different?
Well, part of that, of course, inside your house, you have to really worry about light source and,
water.
Of course, water and pets and things like that. So there's some challenges inside that maybe you don't really have to think about so much outside. And so I've always focused on outside.
Outside is amazing. I loved what you said during I was benefited from getting to take a tour of your garden. And you said for lunch you would just take a salt shaker and go out in the backyard.
Absolutely. I was thinking about that on the way over because that's really, I really believe eating as fresh as possible. And so I've always done that, is just eat right out of the garden. If I have people over, sometimes they give me kind of a weird look when I just pull something out and brush any dirt off of it and eat it.
You grow some things that I've never heard of before. So give us an audio tour of what you've got going on in your backyard.
Okay, so I really focus on having oddball things. So yes, everyone can grow some corn, but I don't want any corn. I want the sweetest corn in the world. So I've found that seed. And I love fruits. So I have a large component of the landscape is devoted to fruit production. So lots of different bramble-type fruits, but of course trees and things like strawberries, whatnot.
Right. Let's go back to the corn. Where did you find the sweetest corn seed?
Well, I do a lot of research. So winter, every gardener knows, is a terrible time of the year because there really isn't much to do. So we all receive lots of catalogs. So I like pouring through the catalogs, but I do a lot of internet research and reading books. And so I'm able to source things by cross-referencing all of these different materials and then thinking about what I want to plant. And then I grow a lot of things from seed. So some things, of course, you have to start indoors. Other things you can direct sow. And so I try to allocate my garden space accordingly.
Do you get a chance to taste it ahead of time so you know what you're going to get?
Most things not.
No, you just have to wait and see what pops up.
I have ordered a lot of what you probably call oddities or curiosities from catalogs or online websites, things like that. And most of them I've never tasted. So you're taking a little bit of risk. Now, a couple of years ago, I ordered some huckleberries, and my wife looked at me and said, well, why would you plant huckleberries? And to me, it was a very easy answer. Who doesn't want to slice a huckleberry pie?
You're right, exactly. And did she make one?
Well, I didn't quite have enough huckleberries for a whole pie.
Not yet.
Not yet. But what I do is I carefully pick everything and then clean it and freeze it and save it up if you're trying to make something like a pie.
So that's something else, yes, because not everything is going to give you as much as you need right away, or some things are going to give you way more than you need. So how do you do the storing and everything so things don't go bad?
Well, that's a great question. So I don't can for the most part. Now, I will make like cold pack out of certain things that you have a lot of, but I generally freeze things. Now, even like with tomatoes, it's a bit of a heresy to freeze a tomato.
Right, when they taste so great right out of the garden.
I always freeze the best ones, and I freeze them whole. But what I do then is when I want to make some salsa, I allow them to thaw, and I take a fork and just prick all of the tomatoes. It drains all of the liquid out, and then you use the leftover meat to actually make the salsa.
So it goes back to tasting the way it did.
It tastes the same. The biggest issue is the texture.
Yeah.
But if you're making something like a salsa, it's already going to be chopped up.
You're mushing it up anyway.
Exactly. Again, you learn by doing, so you find out things that freeze well or don't freeze well. And
yes. Let's start with the trees. Let's go with, what trees do you have going in your garden?
Well, with the trees, I've tried to focus on having dwarf or semi-dwarf trees. I have about 3/4 of an acre, so you quickly fill up that space with standard-sized trees. So I knew immediately go with the smaller size and then trying to go with self-fruitful wherever possible. So I have cherry tree, different kinds of apples. So I picked apples that cross-pollinate each other, but then I have one for baking, one for fresh eating, one for cider making.
Have to ask you, because these are so hard to find. Do you grow transparent apples?
I do not grow transparent apples.
Can I talk you into growing some?
Well, that might be something I would try. The
They're
pride of my orchard at this point is I have a graft from a Johnny Appleseed tree.
Ooh, really?
So that is the cider making apple. So 150, 200 years ago, you really had no way to transport apples to market. So people would make cider so that way you could keep your harvest, but also condense it, if you will, out of bushels, you'd have gallons.
So interesting. Do you read up on all of this? How do you get so much knowledge about it?
I'm a voracious reader. So like one of the other trees I have is a pawpaw tree.
What is that?
The pawpaw is a really interesting tree on a bunch of fronts. So it is the state tree of Ohio, fruit tree.
Wouldn't have known that.
It's the largest fruit in North America, tree fruit.
Pawpaw.
Pawpaw. And if you haven't had them, and this is about the northern end of their range, they have the texture of an overripe banana, the taste of maybe banana and mango, depending on the variety. They have somewhat of a tropical taste.
And if this is something that's native to Ohio, then this must grow a lot in Ohio. Has it over the years become more scarce? Or I've never heard of this.
Well, I think what's happened is we've moved away from the diverse fruits and vegetables that our grandparents or great-grandparents used to grow on their property and eat regularly. And we've now focused on what's available at your nearest grocery store.
Isn't that the truth?
And some of the things like a pawpaw, they're not easy to transport. They bruise easily, and when they're ripe, they look almost too ripe, so they get black looking, but that's when they're
good,
the best.
Yeah.
So they're not commercially available.
So you can't buy these anywhere. You can only grow them.
Maybe in a farmer's market, but you really have to grow your own or forage them. And then the other thing that's interesting with pawpaws is they are pollinated by flies.
That's so interesting.
So in the spring, they have a really interesting deep magenta colored flower, and I've actually gone out to check, and yes, they're little tiny flies.
Wow.
Now, supposedly they smell like rotten meat to attract the flies.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to smell them. I can't detect it. Apparently the flies can. So that's a really interesting story behind the pawpaw.
Yeah.
And we actually have a pawpaw festival in Ohio outside of Athens, which I've gone to before, and they make all sorts of different products out of the pawpaw.
When does that take place? Do you know? Do you remember?
That is in mid-September.
Really? We can go to a pawpaw festival?
Yes.
All right.
So they have dozens of different products.
Pawpaws for everybody.
Absolutely.
How did you find out about them? How did you get some? And you're growing them.
Absolutely. So, again, I read a lot.
Yeah.
So certainly a lot of online research. I pick up books wherever and whenever possible. And a lot of it is I'm looking for the nutrient value of different fruits and vegetables. So like one of the shrubs that I planted last year is called gumi.
Gumi, another thing that,
Gumi.
you know.
They're delicious. So
Okay.
I'm really enamored with the shrub.
Mm-hmm.
Fast growing, just absolutely loaded with fruit this year. They look like slightly elongated sour cherries and are a little less tart than a sour cherry.
Mm-hmm.
And the seed in the middle is just like a single grape seed. But very productive.
Kind of small.
Kind of small,
Mm-hmm.
but they're and I have two varieties so I can get better pollination. They're super high in nutrients. So a lot of these fruits are high in antioxidants.
So good for you.
Absolutely. And
What
so,
do you make out of gumi?
Well, I have them saved up this year for a pie.
Okay, a gumi pie.
Well, that's part of our family reunion. We're always competing for interesting homemade goods.
Yes.
And so one of my aunts and uncles, they always have, he's a fantastic gardener, and they always bring this multi-berry pie. So last year I told him, well, look, I've got a 6-berry pie this year. So I think this year I'll have about 8 berries.
Oh, my. Oh, that'll be incredible. What do you do with pawpaw?
Well, pawpaw.
Banana-like something in milkshakes?
That's it. Smoothies,
Okay.
things like that. There's lots of different products. If you go to the Pawpaw Festival or look at their website, you can see there's lots of different ways that people use them. But they do have a soft texture, so frozen is a good way to use them.
And again, where do you get them? Once you say, okay, I'm going to plant some pawpaw, I'm going to plant some gumi, where do you acquire these?
Well, if I don't find them online, what I do is travel to all of the garden centers and tree farms within about a 100-mile radius looking for particular plants. And so a well-placed phone call or two can let you know if something's there that you're looking for. So I find some of these really rare and unusual items by driving a lot.
Yeah.
And so that's really, and it's interesting because you can see what other plants they have.
Do you ever get contacted by someone saying, well, I'd like to try this? Do you sell some of your plants to anyone?
Well, I haven't gotten to the point of selling any plants, although I can see some that are getting large enough where they could be divided or starts taken from them. Now, the last couple of years, my youngest daughter, Ava, she's been selling vegetables in the neighborhood, which is something I did growing up, taking around wagon loads of blueberries that I would pick. And so she's asked for certain things, and I said, well, that's nice. Go make your own money, and I'll show you how you can do it.
Yeah.
So we load up wagons, and then it's taught her salesmanship, money handling.
She's got a
things
little
like
free
that.
enterprise thing going there.
So,
I
of course,
wanna
I'm
get
doing
on-
all the work.
Yeah, I know, but it's also teaching good things, Dad. That's really
Absolutely.
good. I want to get on her list, by the way. I'm looking at the clock. We do need to take a short break. We're visiting with Peter Trumpauer, talking all about nutritional gardening. We'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.